Okay, so what I did here, in looking at these shots, I'm probably guessing that you shot these pretty much in the afternoon when the sun was real high. So that's what's causing those shadows to be as harsh as they are. Now, from this point forward, if you want to kind of avoid some of that, you might want to use a fill flash. Even though it's real bright outside, if you're fairly close to them, using a fill flash will keep those harsh shadows from happening. But to alleviate what we had here, I went ahead and reset this back to where it was just so I could show you what I did. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I've got it 3 to 1 because your resolution was fairly low, but you'll get the idea. What I'm going to do first is kind of what we do on the landscapes. I'm going to adjust the highlights and the shadows. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out for a minute, and I'm going to bring the highlights all the way down, and I'm going to bring the shadows all the way up. Excuse me, and that helps somewhat, but now it's way too bright. So now I'm going to bring the exposure back down some. And that kind of balances out the shot. Now what I want to do is work on his face. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And there's a couple of ways you can do this, and I actually kind of used both techniques in what I did for you. The first one is your radial filter, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the radial filter, and I'm going to reset the effect back to 0. And I'm going to scroll down below the actual settings for the radial filter, and I'm going to invert the mask, and I'm going to push the feather all the way up because you want this to be a soft effect. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw that filter right on the edge of his face, just about right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here with my sliders, and I'm going to bring the shadows all the way up, and I'm going to do a little bit with exposure. I don't want to get too carried away with that. And a little bit with contrast, because usually when you raise the shadows, it takes contrast out. You can also use the black slider. That will also take some of that out. So I'm going to go ahead and go up with that a little bit, and then I'm going to click done, and you notice that it's lightened his face up a good bit. Now here's the problem. You have to be careful not to do too much, because now it looks like it's actually a little bit lighter than the rest of his face. So you may have to go back in and readjust that a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and bring the exposure back down just a touch. And so then when I click on done there, that looks pretty good. The other thing that I usually do, especially with these split shadows, is the adjustment brush. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the adjustment brush. Everything's set to 0. And I'm going to take the adjustment brush and I'm going to kind of go over spots where I think it's too dark. And like for instance under his eye here. And if you come down here and click on the show overlay mask, it'll show you where you're actually selecting. And I just want to select the shadow parts of his face and his neck. And maybe a little bit of that. So then when I get that selected, I'm going to go ahead and turn that show mask off so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to raise the shadows a little bit more, and I may bump the blacks just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and add some contrast to that just to make sure it doesn't get completely washed out. Not quite that much. And then the last thing I want to do is deal with this white spot on his cheek. So I'm going to go ahead and click done on that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click the adjustment brush again. That resets everything back, gives me a new brush, and I want to click on just that little white spot on his cheek. And you'll notice if I click on the show area, it got just that white area. And what I want to do with that is kind of the reverse. I want to bring the highlights down a little bit, and I want to bring the whites down. That kind of softens that edge of that. And again, I don't want to get too carried away with it because then it'll show. So now that I have actually adjusted with the radial filter and with the adjustment brush, if I hit my backslash key, you'll see where it started, and that's what I did to it. And it almost looks like you turned a flash on your camera. And I did that for pretty much all of these shots. So if you've got any questions, let me know. But I think that's pretty much going to get you where you want to be. Now again, I see a little bit of a thing here, so what I may want to do is come back and grab the adjustment brush again and paint over this part of his face. And again, I'm going to do a show so I can see where I've actually selected his face here. And I want to adjust that just a little bit by, again, bringing up the shadows just a touch. And maybe bringing up the blacks just a little bit. So I'm kind of even his face out. You can see what it's actually doing as I do that. So click done there. So now if I do a backslash, you can see where, again, it looks like you just turned a flash on his face. So that's pretty much the way that you do these. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to give me a holler. I'll be more than happy to help.